The front door was locked, but the knob was warm. Not the faint warmth metal sometimes holds after a sunny afternoon. Not the neutral warmth of a room that hasn't cooled yet. This was different, immediate, intimate, like a palm had been resting there only seconds before I touched it. I stood on the dim landing outside my apartment, keys hanging loosely between my fingers. The hallway light above me hummed with that tired fluorescent buzz every old building seems to have after midnight. Its glow flickered softly against the scratched brass of the doorknob, making the surface pulse between dull gold and shadow. My thumb stayed pressed against the metal. Still warm. I glanced down the hall. Nothing moved. The carpet absorbed sound the way old carpet does. Thick, quiet, vaguely dusty. My neighbor's door across the landing remained closed. The stairwell at the end of the corridor breathed out its usual cool draft. I slid the key into the lock. The mechanism clicked open with a sound that seemed too loud for the hour. For a moment, I didn't turn the knob. I don't know why. Maybe because the warmth lingered under my skin. Maybe because I had locked the door myself when I left for work 8 hours earlier, and I lived alone. Eventually, I turned it. The knob rotated easily, the latch slipping back with a dull metal whisper. I pushed the door open just a few inches. The apartment beyond was dark. No lights, no television glow. Only the faint gray wash of streetlight leaking through the blinds in the living room. I listened. Silence. But it wasn't empty silence. There was a density to it, like the quiet inside a theater just before a performance begins. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The air felt slightly warmer than the hallway. Not by much, just enough to notice. I slipped off my shoes by the door and stood there for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. The shape of the couch emerged from the shadows. The low coffee table. The kitchen doorway just beyond. Everything exactly where I had left it. Still, something about the air felt disturbed, like a room after someone leaves. I rubbed my thumb against my fingertips again. The memory of the warmth hadn't faded. I crossed the living room slowly. The floorboards under the rug gave a faint creak, familiar and ordinary, but the sound seemed to travel farther than usual through the apartment. When I reached the kitchen, I flicked on the light. The sudden brightness felt intrusive. Nothing was out of place. Dishes in the rack. Counter empty. The refrigerator humming softly in the corner. I opened it without thinking, the cool white light spilling over my hands. Inside, the air smelled faintly metallic and cold. I stared at the shelves for a few seconds before closing it again. Behind me, somewhere deeper in the apartment, a faint sound shifted. Not a footstep, more like wood adjusting. A slow, quiet creak. I stood still. The refrigerator compressor clicked off. The silence that followed felt heavier. I turned my head slightly toward the hallway that led to the bedroom. Dark. Still. Probably the building settling, I told myself. Old pipes. Temperature change. I turned off the kitchen light. The apartment sank back into shadow. The streetlight outside drew long, thin bars across the floor through the blinds. Dust floated slowly through them, drifting like quiet snow. I walked toward the hallway. Halfway there, I stopped. The air felt warmer again. Not the whole room, just the hallway. I noticed it the way you notice heat near an open oven, subtle but undeniable. My stomach tightened. "Hello," I said. My voice sounded strange in the apartment, smaller than usual. No answer. I moved closer. The hallway carpet muffled my steps completely. The walls narrowed the space, swallowing the dim streetlight until only a pale smear reached the bedroom door at the far end. The door was closed. I was certain I had left it open when I left for work. A thin line of darkness traced the bottom edge where the door met the floor. I stood there for several seconds, listening. Nothing. Then, a faint sound from the other side. Not movement exactly. More like the soft press of weight shifting against wood. My throat tightened. "Is someone in there?" I asked. The words barely left my mouth. The apartment didn't respond. But the warmth in the hallway grew stronger. Not hot, just present. Like body heat in a crowded elevator. My fingers brushed the bedroom doorknob. Cold. The difference startled me. I turned it slowly and pushed the door open. The bedroom looked exactly the same as always. Bed neatly made. Window closed. The faint orange glow of the street lamp painting a crooked rectangle on the far wall. Empty. I stepped inside. The air felt cooler here. I checked the closet. Nothing but hanging coats and the quiet smell of fabric. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The mirror reflected my face pale in the dim light. I stood there for a while, listening again. Everything seemed normal. Eventually, I let out a slow breath and walked back into the living room. Maybe the warmth had come from my own hand earlier. Maybe the hallway just held heat differently. Old buildings do strange things with air. I stopped halfway across the room. The front door stood where I'd left it. Closed. Still locked. The hallway light outside leaked faintly around the frame. I walked over to it. My fingers touched the knob again. Cold. Completely cold. I frowned. I was certain it had been warm earlier. Not just warm, almost human. I stood there thinking about that for a while. Then I noticed something small. The chain lock above the knob. I never use it. It's old and slightly bent, and it usually hangs loose against the door. But now it was slid firmly into place. I stared at it. I hadn't touched it. Slowly, I reached up and lifted the chain free. The metal made a soft scraping sound as it dropped. Behind the door, the hallway remained silent. But when I stepped back and looked across the apartment again, the air felt different. Not warmer, just occupied. I stood there listening, and after a moment I realized something that made the room feel smaller. When I first arrived, the knob had been warm, as if someone had just been holding it. Someone on the inside, waiting for me to come home. Or, my gaze drifted slowly toward the dark hallway leading to the bedroom again. Someone who had just let go. She found a voicemail from herself, recorded while she was asleep. I know that sentence sounds detached, like it belongs to someone else's story. But the she was me. I just didn't think of it that way at first. It happened at 2:13 a.m., the hour when the apartment building goes so quiet that even the refrigerator seems cautious about making noise. I woke because my phone vibrated against the nightstand. The sound was soft, but in the stillness it felt loud enough to pull me completely out of sleep. The room was dark except for the faint blue light leaking through the blinds from the street lamp outside. I reached for the phone. The screen lit my hand in pale white. One new voicemail. That alone was unusual. No one leaves voicemails anymore. But what made me pause was the caller ID. From me. My own number. For a moment I assumed it was some kind of spam glitch. Those happen sometimes, spoofed numbers, automated calls. I stared at the notification while my eyes adjusted to the brightness. Then I noticed the timestamp. Recorded. 2:07 a.m. 6 minutes earlier. I had been asleep. I checked the call log. No outgoing call. No recording app open. Nothing that explained it. The phone screen dimmed slightly as if it were getting tired of waiting. My bedroom felt unusually still. Even the air seemed to be holding its breath. I tapped the voicemail. The playback screen appeared. A thin gray bar stretched across the display. At the beginning of it was a small triangular button. The length read 0:48. 48 seconds. I hesitated. The silence around me deepened in a way I can't really describe. It was the same apartment, the same room I slept in every night, but the atmosphere felt attentive, like something was waiting for me to press play. Eventually I did. For a few seconds there was nothing but faint static. Then breathing. Slow. Uneven. I froze. It was unmistakably the sound of someone asleep. Air moving softly through the nose, occasionally catching slightly in the throat. My own breathing. I realized I had stopped breathing entirely while listening. The recording continued. Another long inhale. Another slow exhale. The sound quality had that compressed voicemail distortion, thin and slightly metallic, but the rhythm was too familiar. I had recorded myself sleeping before once, years ago, to check if I snored. This sounded the same pace, the same slight pause between breaths. But then something shifted. In the recording, the breathing stopped, just for a second. Then a whisper. Don't. I felt a small pulse of cold move through my chest. The voice was mine. Soft, hoarse, barely awake. Don't listen. The words were almost swallowed by static, like my mouth had been half against the phone microphone. My eyes flicked around the bedroom, the closet door, the dresser, the faint stripe of light across the ceiling from the blinds. Everything looked normal. The voicemail continued. More breathing. Then the voice again. Please. A longer pause. Don't finish it. The audio crackled softly. My thumb hovered over the screen. I should have stopped the message right there. Instead, I kept listening. In the recording, the breathing grew faster, uneven now, like someone turning in bed. Then something strange happened. A sound entered the voicemail that didn't belong to the recording. A faint tap. I looked up immediately. The sound had come from somewhere in the apartment. A small, dry click, like wood shifting. My phone speaker continued playing. In the voicemail, my voice whispered again. You heard that. I felt my throat tighten. The timing was wrong. The tap had happened in my apartment just seconds ago. But the voicemail had been recorded earlier. The audio crackled softly, as if the microphone had brushed fabric. My voice returned. I thought so. The words came out in a slow murmur. My heart was beating faster now. I could feel it in my ears. I sat up in bed. The mattress shifted under me. The voicemail reacted instantly. You're sitting up. I stopped moving. A thin layer of cold spread across my back. There was no way the recording could know that. Unless it wasn't a recording. Unless something else was happening. The phone screen glowed brighter against the darkness, illuminating the blankets around my legs. On the voicemail timeline, the little progress dot slid slowly forward. 30 seconds. Still 18 seconds left. I whispered into the room without meaning to. Hello. My voice sounded too loud. The voicemail hissed with a brief burst of static. Then my recorded voice spoke again. Don't do that. A pause. You're making it notice. My mouth went dry. The apartment felt smaller now. The air heavier. The voicemail continued. I heard the sound of sheets shifting, like someone rolling over. Then a whisper that sounded closer to the microphone than before. I didn't mean to call you. My fingers tightened around the phone. I was trying to stay quiet. The audio crackled. You were asleep then. Another pause. Which means. My voice on the recording trailed off. The silence stretched for several seconds. Then, very softly, it's awake now. The voicemail ended. The screen displayed playback complete. For a long moment I didn't move. The apartment was silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt aware. Like the space between the walls had leaned closer. I slowly opened the voicemail details. At the top of the screen was the call information. From me. Recorded. 2:07 a.m. But there was something else now. A second timestamp had appeared beneath it. Last accessed. 2:14 a.m. I frowned. That wasn't possible. It was only 2:13. My eyes drifted slowly toward the dark hallway outside my bedroom. The apartment remained perfectly still. Then my phone vibrated again in my hand. A new notification slid onto the screen. Voicemail received. My chest tightened. The sender was the same. From me. This time the timestamp read. Recorded. 2:13 a.m. Right now. My thumb hovered above the screen. The preview text beneath the notification showed the beginning of the transcription. Only 3 words. And they made my skin crawl. Because the message hadn't been opened yet. But the preview already knew what it said. You pressed play.